What's going on, guys? It is Thursday, May 21st. We are skipping 9.2, just so you're aware. Just focusing on the most important stuff for the rest of the year. 9.3 is about two-way tables, which you guys are going to be doing a project on to kind of finish out the year. So obviously this is pretty important to learn. So that's what we're going to start today. We're just going to do kind of part one of 9.3. So let's get right into it here. And let's just know what our learning targets are, and this is gonna make much more sense once we start the actual lesson. All right, so I can read and interpret joint frequencies and marginal frequencies in a two-way table is what our learning target is. All right, so let's read together quick. What is a two-way table? It says here, a two-way table displays two categories of data collected from the same source. You randomly survey students in your school about their grades on the last test and whether they studied for the test. The two-way table shows your results. Each entry in the table is called a joint frequency. So they're just giving you a quick example of a two-way table and what that might look like. All right, so columns are representing the students who studied and did not study. Okay, so right here, columns. And rows are representing what grade they got, whether they passed or failed. All right, so rows. All right, we got to know columns, we got to know rows. And they're showing that joint frequencies are these numbers inside of the two-way table. All right, so each entry in the table is called a joint frequency. Got to know that vocab for example one. All right, so let's look at example one quick. It is asking us from that same example, which we're going to look at in a minute. It's saying how many of the students in the survey above studied for the test and passed. All right, so how many of the students in the survey studied for the test and passed it? Okay, so we're going to look for the column and row that meet up where the student studied and passed the test. All right, so right here, they studied and passed. This box represents 21 students who studied and passed the test. Okay, let's look at an extra one. This will make a lot more sense because we can look at it at the same time as reading the question. So you randomly survey students about whether they like orange juice. The two-way table shows your results. How many female students in the survey like orange juice? All right, so they're looking for female students. So here's the column for female students that said yes, that they like orange juice. All right, so I'm looking at my rows here. So here's the students that said yes to liking orange juice, and here's the amount of female students that said yes. So our answer here would be 29. Okay? Should make a good amount of sense. Move forward. Let's look underneath here. All right, so we're going to scroll a little bit to right here. So we talked about joint frequencies. Those are the numbers inside of the columns and rows. Okay? Now, the sums of the rows and columns in a two-way table are called marginal frequencies. What does sum mean? So remember, that means we're adding basically the rows and columns to come up with marginal frequencies. All right. So example 2 is saying to find and interpret the marginal frequencies for the survey, which is really below here. All right. So again, we want to let's find the marginal frequencies. The marginal frequencies will be the sums of the columns and the rows, okay? And then the total amount of students who were surveyed. All right, so let's look at what that means, okay? We want the total of, basically, we're gonna start with how many students studied total. All right, so I'm gonna do this myself here. How many students studied total? This would be 22, okay? 21 plus 1. How many students did not study? 8, okay? Now we're gonna look at our rows. All right, we're gonna look at our rows. How many students passed? 23. How many students failed? 7. Okay, so what's the total of the rows and the columns that's going to tell us how many students were surveyed in the first place, all right, the total amount. So again, 23 plus 7 is 30, 22 plus 8 is also 30. So that's how many students were surveyed in the first place, okay? So let's read this quick. Let's interpret all of this. I'm going to erase my numbers. Same ones that they have here, but now we're going to interpret, make sure we understand what these rows and columns mean. All right, so again, 22 students studied, 8 students did not. 23 students passed, 7 students failed, and then there were 30 students that were surveyed. Okay, so again, it's pretty simple. We're just adding basically the columns, we're adding the rows, and we're finding the total amount of students or whatever it is that were surveyed in the first place. All right, let's do one extra, same way. Find and interpret the marginal frequencies for the survey above. Okay, so that's not really going to help us out because there's no survey shown. All right, let's look at an on your own question where they actually have a survey. Okay, so you randomly survey students in a cafeteria about their plans for a football game and a school dance. The two-way table shows your results. So let's look at part A. How many students will attend the dance but not the football game? And then part B is saying to find and interpret the marginal frequencies. Okay, so what I want you guys to do is pause the video real quick and just see if you can come up with answers for this question, for each of these questions, really. All right, and then when you come back, we can talk about the answers. All right, so how many students will attend the dance but not the football game? So they will attend the dance. That's this row right here, so it's one of these, but not the football game. Here's the football game. The ones that will not attend but will attend the dance would be right here. That's 5 students. Okay. Now find and interpret the marginal frequencies. So here's what I want to do. I'm just going to add 35 and 16. How many people are going to attend the football game is what I'm finding, right? So that's going to be 51. How many are not attending the football game? 25. Okay. How many are attending the dance? Let's add the row here. That's 40. How many are not attending the dance? That's 36. And then what's our total? What's our total for both? Let's just do our column here. 0 plus 6, that's 6, and 4 plus 3. So 76 students were surveyed total, right? But here we can see our interpretations of everything, okay? So a total of 51 students will attend the game, a total of 25 students will not, a total of 40 students will attend the dance, a total of 36 students will not, all right? And again, let's remember, we also need to interpret this. There were 76 students surveyed in the first place, all right? So that should make some sense. And let's look at one last example. So here they're really asking you to create the two-way table, all right? So I'm going to show you an option of how the book does it, okay? They basically are showing you over here that they took tally marks of survey results, all right? So it says you randomly survey students between the ages of 12 and 17 about whether they ride the bus to school. The results are shown in the tally sheets. Make a two-way table that includes the marginal frequencies, all right? So they want you to make a two-way table. So here's an option of how we can do that. All right, so it says the two categories for the table are the ages and whether or not they ride the bus. All right, so one's going to be our columns, one's going to be our rows. It says use the tally sheets to calculate each joint frequency, and then we can add to find each marginal frequency. Okay, so what they did is they chose to use age as their columns. So we have 12 to 13-year-olds, 14 to 15-year-olds, 16 to 17-year-olds as our columns. And then on the rows, they used students that ride the bus and do not ride the bus. Okay? And they used the tally marks from their results, all right, to make these joint frequencies in the middle. Okay? And at the end, they simply added the columns and they added the rows to get their totals and to get their marginal frequencies. All right? So very similar to what we just talked about, but here's just an example of how we can create a two-way table if we have data from a survey, which is essentially what you guys will be doing when we do this project, sometime next week or the week after, okay, to kind of finish out your year. So we can look at this again when it comes to that, but what we mainly want to focus on today is what we talked about in examples 1 and 2, all right, which is, again, that we can read and interpret the joint frequencies, which are the ones that are in the columns and the rows, and the marginal frequencies, which are the sums of the columns and the rows, the totals, okay? So what you guys are going to do right now is you're going to head into Big Ideas and complete this 9.3 practice part 1. It's just a couple problems that's going to make sure you understand what we talked about today. All right. If you have any questions, email me or ask in the discussion thread. But otherwise, I'll talk to you guys later.